Alright, you're listening to Memorabilia, first track from my solo album. And this is a free improv intro to the piece. I'm taking the first motif from the melody as a starting point. It often helps me to connect a free improv or a free intro to a song. Here we are in the form. I wrote this piece at my parents' place in Hagen, where I grew up, on the balcony next to my old childhood room, just with pen and paper, without the instrument, obviously. There's no instrument on the balcony. And I like to do that from time to time because I get into different things. This section introduces some of the elements that will be coming up more often in the solo album. Overdubs. When I went into the studio in June of 2020, I played piano and overdubbed a little bit of celesta in this little section that will be coming more often. But when I listened to it after a couple of months after that, I felt something was missing, so I went into the home studio of my friend Oliver Lutz, and we recorded some stuff with my Mellotron that I bought around that time. We're back in that section now. Kind of reminds me a little bit of there's very, very subtle woodwind arrangements on the record New Standard by Herbie Hancock, one of my favorite records. And these arrangements are so in the background that you don't really notice them, and I really like that. I wanted to have something similar. Kind of broadens the palette a little bit, and yeah, back into the section. This section I wrote not on the balcony, but when I came back home then to my place. It was a little bit more pianistic. I'm mainly improvising over the first page, and the second page is also something that I then wrote at the piano when I arrived back home, developing the material that comes further, but I'll let you know when we get to the second page. Yeah, we're looping this part for a little while, and we'll get to the second page. Kind of a variation of the first page. Originally, these couple of bars I played on the piano, but we took them out when we were doing the Mellotron overdubs, because it made more sense to have a full orchestral sound for once. I never wrote those backgrounds down. I kind of improvised them or tried to find something that worked. But now I kind of want to write them down because I don't remember what I did. There's a nice line that one of the horn plays. On the mellotron that I have, you can mix certain sounds. So I think I mixed kind of a flute sound with a trombone sound. It kind of gives it an interesting timbre. Ruby, My Dear is one of my favorite Thelonious Monk tunes. I guess the version that I know the best is, or that I'm familiar with the most, is the one with John Coltrane from the Coltrane Monk album. I think this was the second take. Before that, I kind of was relying a little bit too much on the original and not really allowing myself to discover the piece on my own. It's a problem that I sometimes have with Monk's music because it's so specific, and usually people play the melody and the chords and you don't really get the full picture when you just have those parameters with Monk's music, because there's so many little things that belong to the piece. So I usually take that as an opportunity to go deep and try to learn as much about the song as possible. Because it's how he plays it that really shows you what is the piece. It's not just the melody and the chords. But that brings the difficulty with it that you get stuck in imitating the original. So I guess in the second take I had to force myself a little bit to let go and just discover it myself. So right now I'm in the solo section, which is the form basically. But I noticed that I could find pedal tones that would resemble the harmony and the functions, but have it a little bit in a more, let's say, modal setting. So it doesn't move around as much as in the melody. I can really hear myself allowing to find those other colors that I usually introduce or use when I play my own music, but I really have to let go when I play standards and allow myself to find those colors. The celesta is back for a song Noir, a piece that was originally recorded with my trio, on the album Lineage. When I was in the studio, in the Deutschlandfunk studio, they rented a celesta for me. It was a nice celesta, but it also was broken a little bit, and you can hear it at some places. But it had a vibe and it had a certain sound. And I like how it reverberates in the room. But I recorded it on celesta solo, and after that we tried to, in the studio still, I tried to play with Yamaha DX7, a solo over it, the solo section, but I couldn't play over the changes. It was just too hard, and also we didn't really find the right sound, so we just left it solo. But like with a couple of other pieces on the record, I kept listening to it and felt like something was missing. And mainly my struggle to do a solo record was, in a way, overcoming that the self-doubt of not being able to do good music on my own, basically. And I don't really know if I succeeded, because I had to do overdubs on certain pieces. But, it's the end product, I guess, that counts. But Song Noir, I kept listening to that song, the solo celesta. And when I bought the Mellotron and started doing overdubs on other songs, I felt the flute sound could be something that I could use on this. So I used it for the melody, and also here, now we're in the solo section, I could use it to play a solo. And somehow it was easier to float over those chords with the flute sound. And the flute is something that is very dear and something that's very, very... I like the sound, but also I have a connection to the sound because of my father, who not only is a great pianist, but he also plays the flute very well. Yeah, here we kind of put the flutes down an octave or 2 octaves to strengthen those chords that wouldn't have had that impact with the celesta on its own. Chronic Romantic was a character that I imagined, and I imagined that guy as a sort of a Bond villain or something, who had the condition to always say something romantic regardless of the situation that he's in. And that thought helped me to write this piece, and to also allow myself to write a romantic and sweet piece like this, which I wouldn't have dared a couple of years ago. I guess you can hear the influence that Gabriel Fauré's music and Federico Mompo's music and maybe also Franz Liszt's music has on me. And this came from actually a third recording session. No? The first recording session was at Deutschlandfunk with piano and celesta. Second one was with overdubs at my friend's place. The third one was at Riverside Studios in Cologne, where I recorded 3 more piano pieces that were more through composed and more actual solo pieces. Sort of grew into the solo world more during that year of not performing with people. And this is a result of that, Chronic Romantic. Embracing You was a piece that I knew was going to be a lot of work in terms of playing overdubs, recording overdubs, and using different colors. I think I started with the Yamaha DX7, recording those chords, and then playing the melody, which is the top note of those chords, with the celesta. But right now in the first round it's muted, but we're gonna hear it in the second. There it is. And then I recorded a bass with just the low piano notes that we kind of altered a little bit the sound of. And later on we'll get to a solo section. First we're gonna play, I'll introduce a new section with chords. And over that we'll hear a celesta melody and then a celesta improvisation. So I recorded a couple of celesta improvisations over that form. Here it is. This is the B section where you'll hear the melody on top. And so I recorded a couple of impro takes, but we actually just stacked them on top of each other because I like what they did to each other. And a couple of months later, we recorded those low flute sounds from the mellotron that you're hearing here. This little swirl or whatever was a mistake from copying something that was edited. So that it actually was something from the impro section that comes later. But I like this. I like the mistake, so we kept it. This is the melody I was talking about. Here we are in the solo section. So it's piano improvising and then celesta improvising, all on top of each other, and the mellotron also is playing a couple of lines in the background. I guess this is one of the songs that was most inspired by this guy Blake Mills and his way of producing. I was listening to his album Mutable Set all the time when I was recording this album. The melody comes back. That vamp in the background is in time. It's 2 times repeated, 4 bars, and then we get to a second ending, or third ending actually, which is another 4 bars. And the melody is written freely on top of that, so it usually ends up in different places of the harmony. And there we have an organ that I found on the mellotron. This is the title track of the record, and it's dedicated to my family, my 2 kids and my wife. Serenade was a birthday present for my wife. We spent some time together at our apartment when the kids were hanging out at my mother-in-law's place, and that was around her birthday. So I wrote this in my room, and she was hanging out in the living room, and the next day she had a birthday, and this was a birthday present for her, Serenade. The intro you just heard was something that I wrote afterwards, after I wrote the piece basically, and I wanted to have something like sometimes in Jobim's music there's intros that sort of set a vibe but don't really have much to do with the written material. At least it seems to me like that way. And I wanted to have something similar, something that is introducing a vibe but then opening a different door into the piece. This also was from the 3rd recording session done in February of 2021, when, as I said before, I settled into the solo mood a little bit more through 1 year of playing solo, basically. And then I noticed, this is another one of those really, to me, solo pieces. So I had to record this, and this had to be part of the album. This way of accompanying yourself with the left hand is something that I've heard before, but from my teacher, John Taylor. He's really great at that, and listening to him helped me to understand this kind of accompaniment and try to incorporate it in this piece. And again, here I wrote an outro that is a little bit reminiscent of the intro, but also something a little different. Face on the Barroom Floor is one of the, I think, greatest compositions by Wayne Shorter. I mean, he has yet to write a bad song, but this is one of the greatest ones, to me at least. From a later Weather Report album, I think it's called Spot in Life, where he's playing it in duo with Joe Savino. And I came across the original sheet music of Wayne's, sort of a quest that I'm on to find as much of his handwritten sheet music. And I think the first time I really performed it live was in duo with Nelson Veras on guitar. But I thought maybe for the solo album this might be a nice thing to try, because it's pretty challenging harmonically and just melody also, to get it all together in a solo setting. But I thought I'd try, and I found it very, very inspiring. And I think also this was a second take, like Ruby My Dear. The first take I was again too reliant on the original, trying to get it right, and by that, getting it wrong in a way. And here I just allowed myself to play with it. And it's something that I have to remind myself to play like a kid would play with material. When a kid is playing with Legos, it's not trying to get it right, just trying to have fun, to build something. So I try to approach it like that. And thereby I feel I got closer to the piece. Got a personal thing out of it. And that also had, on a technical level, had to do with allowing myself to step out of the time and then get back into the time, and or even leave the form for a while. Like here. Back into it. This is again from the first recording session that I did at Deutschlandfunk. And I went into the studio with like an insane list of material, around 40 pieces. And I think I recorded, at that first recording session, I've recorded 30 pieces. Only allowing myself a couple of takes, like 2 or 3 the most. But I didn't want to have a situation where I kind of forced myself and wanted to get it right or something, because I was scared, scared of the solo challenge. So I felt like I need as little as much. How do I say this? I don't need any pressure. That's what I'm trying to say. So I tried to put away all the pressure, just allowing myself like, okay, if it doesn't work with the first or second take, I'll move on to the next, because I have so much material that I would like to play. There'll be something that will come out of it. And as I said, the recording process of this album was almost a full year. And it's interesting to see what ended up on the record from the first recording session, from the second recording session where I did the overdubs, and from the third where I recorded those, as I said, more specific solo pieces. For example, if there were certain pieces like Round Midnight, I usually play Round Midnight at every solo concert, and I feel super comfortable with it. So I thought, this is a no-brainer. I'll record this at the solo recording. And I couldn't get it right. I couldn't get it to a place where I usually get to pretty quickly when I play it live. And different other pieces where I felt like hesitant or wasn't sure if they would work out, like this one actually, I got to a place, and it's interesting. On Wayne's sheet, there's two eyes and glasses written at this very moment. Bowl Song by John Taylor, and this is on my favorite John Taylor album called Rosalind. It's the first track from that album. And here again we'll hear the Yamaha DX7, and this is a very specific sound that I found when I was playing with my kids on the DX7, experimenting and trying to find different sounds. We found this sound together, and I felt a very kind of a connection to this sound. I like how it moves and how it's not static. And I wanted to record the bowl song, so I tried it on the DX7, and I found that it really fits to how I feel about this song. And I don't really improvise on this take. It's just me playing the melody and thinking about John, actually. Just thinking about him, and I really miss him. I really miss him. I didn't want to use headphones, so we installed a speaker for the Yamaha DX7 that we put into the room and then recorded it from there. So you're hearing how the sound moves through the room. This is exactly how it sounded to me when I was sitting there playing. You can also, if you listen very closely, you can hear the keys moving. And also there was a issue with the lamps on the ceiling. There was a clicking sound at some point. We couldn't figure out how to turn it off or whatever. So sometimes you hear it, but it adds to the vibe. This is this exact sound that you've heard before on Embracing You. In fact, the only DX7 sound that I'm using on the record. Private Eye Blue was inspired by the New York trilogy by Paul Auster, especially mainly the second story from that trilogy, where a guy gets hired to spy on another guy, and he kind of loses himself in that task. Buying an apartment, just leaving his wife, leaving his life, and buying an apartment just across the street from the guy he's supposed to spy on, and documenting everything about him. And this piece is sort of trying to get close to how he turns mad. Recorded it solo, and again, this is the same story like on other pieces. I wasn't satisfied with just a solo thing, so we recorded a clarinet, of course. Why not a clarinet? A clarinet with the mellotron, but we put a delay on it, and also when I sent it to the guy who mixed it, Rob Griffin. I told him that the clarinet should be like an alien life form that is lurking in the back somehow. It's not in the foreground, it's somewhere in the back. Bit more madness here. Somehow the sound becomes part of the piano right now when I'm listening to it. Sort of an extension. Adagio was one of the pieces that I also recorded during the first solo piano recording. And I wasn't satisfied with it. Before that, even we tried to record it with my trio and Nelson Veras for the album that came before that, Ascent. But also there, I wasn't quite satisfied with it. So I thought, yeah, this isn't part of the record. Let me record something else. Then I started doing the overdubs at my friend Oliver Lutz's place. And then I thought maybe we could do the whole song in the can. So just using nothing from the original solo recording, but building it. So we did this, and then I thought, but I need something to lead into it. Let me improvise an intro. And this is the intro. played on a synth. And now we get into the piece, using the same sound for the intro, then like when using the same sound for the intro for the chords that I'm playing in the form here. The melody is played through the mellotron flute sound again, and supported by me playing it also on Ollie's upright piano that we recorded with my iPhone. That synth sound is coming from an app called Arturia iSam synthesizer. And I've been using this sound also in Ollie's band, Re Calamari. So I was familiar with it before. I think it kind of fits to this song. Now I'm soloing over the chords. Comping a little bit on the upright piano. It's very soft in the mix, on purpose. Adagio for Nobler Toners is dedicated to Robert Landfermann and Nelson Veras. And Nobler Toners is an anagram of their names, Nelson and Robert. Last section, we're looping and the flute is still soloing over that. Sometimes when I play piano, I imagine myself as a flute player or a horn player or whatever. And it's nice that through the help of the mellotron on this record, I get to actually dive into that sound that I'm imagining when I'm playing sometimes. Elsa's idea is a song that is inspired by my daughter, and she actually started this song by inventing 5 notes for her first piano lesson that she had. And it was an exercise where she had to play 5 notes that were set and then imagine 5 notes or a different amount of notes on her own. And what she imagined was what I'm playing in the left hand. And I then moved around what I played in the left hand and sort of made a form out of it and then composed a melody on top of it. But to give her credit, I said, this is Elsa's idea, which is the name of the piece. Again, this is from the 3rd recording session. And again, this is one of the more through composed pieces that evolved through me just playing solo mostly for a year. And also, if you look at the harmony, it's actually a blues in C. It's a bit disguised. And also, I thought, since the record is dedicated to my family, it's nice to end with a song that is inspired by my kids. Like most of the album, actually.